Good morning. Welcome to another episode of College Coffee Talk with Pearl and Andy Lockwood, co-located in remote locations. Hello, Pearl.
Hello, Andy. Hello, everybody.
You know, I don't even have my coffee cup for our synchronized sip. You have yours. You're on brand with your Pearl cup.
On brand.
All right. Well,
I would never let our listeners and viewers hang. I would never leave them hanging this way. So to all of us who are with beverage,
all right.
On a count of
1, 2,
3,
3.
we will take.
Go.
Cheers, everyone.
So this is a show about getting into college, paying for college, sort of in the trenches, behind the scenes, examples and case studies that we have. Pearl is an expert in financial aid. She prepares financial aid applications for approximately 400 families each and every year. And I handle helping coach kids get into college, sometimes as early as 8th grade. I met a family with an 8th grader this weekend. And the applications and essays, extracurriculars, you name it. So here we are at the beginning of June. And like every June, this is sort of in our business, this is sort of a transitional month because you've got high schools winding down for the year, a lot of finals and AP exams over the previous couple of weeks. And for families who have class of 2026 rising seniors, it's like that scene in Star Wars where the trash compactor is like squeezing more and more, except I think Pearl and my hygiene is a little bit better than the stuff in that trash compactor. But yes. What we're going to just kind of give you an overview on are sort of the last minute checklist type things you should be thinking about, both in terms of figuring out how to pay for college if you have a 2026 kid. And I'll share some thoughts on the applications and essays and the college list and all of that. And if you have someone who's younger, consider this a sneak peek, although who knows what things are going to look like next year, So Pearl, why don't you start off with a little bit of a here's what you need to be doing now type overview for financial aid to get prepared.
All right. So for those who are going to be applying for financial aid for the, wow, I can't believe it, 26-27 school year, that means high school graduates of 2026, the first thing you're going to want to be aware of when filing financial aid forms is that you will need your 2024 tax return available to you, because that is the basis of all of the income information that you're going to need to provide in the financial aid forms. Okay, how do you know which financial aid forms to file? So many of you or all of you have heard of the FAFSA, and that can be applied for at all the colleges, approximately 4,000 or so that are out there. And that determines your federal eligibility for federal aid. Your eligibility for federal aid. And then there's another form called the CSS Profile that approximately 400 or 500 colleges out there require if you are seeking financial aid or potentially merit at a school that requires it. And that form also requires your 2024 income, but it's also going to require a lot more specific and additional information than the FAFSA alone. Those are the two forms that could be required. How do you know which forms to file? It depends on the school that your student child is applying to. If the school they're applying to requires it, then both you need to submit. If a school is only requiring the FAFSA, then the FAFSA only is what you submit to that school. So everything is school dependent. So that's the income tax year you need. What can we talk about? What can you do now to potentially improve your eligibility at any of the schools your student is applying to? Well, first thing, you got to know if you're need eligible, partially need eligible, or not need eligible. In which case, I'll just get it out there now, you are still looking to file financial aid forms because many schools require the filing of financial aid forms for merit money. Okay, so that's important to know if you think you're not need eligible, and why should you bother? For example,
can you talk about that because a lot of people don't understand the rules of eligibility. So what goes into it besides?
Okay.
Is it income driven?
Yes, it is predominantly income driven, and as I've already stated, the 2024 income tax return will be the basis of that formula. It takes up about 60% of that federal formula. What's made up of the rest? Mostly and primarily, and when I say income, that's student income and parent income.
Is there a magic number where if you go too high, you can't qualify?
So, of course, let me very quickly tell you what the formula is for financial aid. It is cost of attendance minus what is called your SAI, Student Aid Index, which is the number the FAFSA gives you based on this information I'm talking about. So it's the cost of attendance of this particular school minus your family's SAI equals your need. So if you are at a school like Binghamton, for example, that's all in about $35,000 a year, and your SAI is $50,000, at that school, when you say cost of attendance 35 minus $50,000, which is your SAI, equals a negative number or minus 15,000, you are not demonstrating need at Binghamton, that school. However, if the cost of attendance is at let's say a Cornell University, which costs $95,000 a year, and your SAI is $50,000, then you will be need eligible in the amount of $45,000 at that school. So in that case, you are partially need eligible. You are certain need eligible to the tune of $45,000, and then you still have about $50,000 that you're going to be responsible for, or hopefully get in the way of an award, et cetera, or borrow in the way of a loan. So that is just the nuance. Now, in terms of, that's income. Assets are the other big factor in this formula to determine the SAI. Here are the penalties for assets. For assets in the student name, you will be penalized 25% of that, what that asset is. If the asset is in the parent's name, meaning a non-exempt asset, non-retirement investments, or cash checking and savings, stocks, bonds, 529, that penalty is 5.64%. To give you information that's makes sense, I'll give you real numbers. For every $100,000 that is in the student's name, that student will lose $25,000 of eligibility for having it there and not doing something else with it. For the $100,000 that's in the parent name, you lose $5,640 for not doing something else with it. You lose $5,640 of eligibility you might have otherwise had. Then there's also how many other kids you have in college, which there's somewhat of a gray area because it used to unequivocally discount. You would get a sibling discount for multiple siblings enrolled in college at the same time. However, the federal rules got rid of that about 2 years ago, meaning got rid of giving a discount. So that would mean FAFSA only schools would not, whether you had one student in school and in college or three triplets, in college at the same time, the SAI would not change any longer. There's no credit or rather discount given for those other students. That being said, that's the official word.
May I pull you out of the weeds a little bit?
You can pull me out of the weeds, but okay. I just want to reassure, because I know there's been much about that. Very quickly, they are still asking about multiple students on both the FAFSA and CSS Profile. So we're not sure if they're totally doing away with it.
Well, each school has discretion, right?
That's true.
Yeah.
Yep.
So typically when we do these broadcasts and our webinars and our live workshops in our office, we have a lot of families come in who are sort of in that what I call forgotten middle class or mass affluent categories, meaning they make a six-figure salary, sometimes more, and they think, you know what, we can't possibly qualify for anything because my accountant told me that, or my guidance counselor told us that, or we went to our college night at the high school in the fall and they said, don't bother applying. So what do you say to those people?
I'd say to you, since, as I just provided in that example, between two different schools costing different costs of attendance, and if you happen to fall into that forgotten middle class, my advice to you would be make your list based on, of course, where your student wants to go, mitigate your assets as best you can, reallocating them, but you must also, since the name of the game is going to be not only for that crowd, but for most in terms of the deepest and steepest discount one can get, it's less about need eligibility and it is much more about merit aid. So the key is, okay, there are a few pieces of housekeeping one has to do to maximize eligibility. One is in the need eligibility category. We've discussed that. And then in terms of merit, you have to get an understanding of one, which schools even offer merit. And as I've already said, for many schools that offer merit aid, and you're looking for that discount, you have to file financial aid forms to trigger that merit eligibility. So one, you need to know which schools offer merit money altogether. And two, how do I know if my kid is going to get merit money from that school? Very loosely, because these things unfortunately are not published, but loosely speaking, you need to honestly assess your students' statistics and weigh them against the actual admitted students at that school you're looking at that offers merit. And if your student falls within that top quartile, top 25% of that school's statistics, SATs, grades, scores, etc., there is a general congruence likelihood that that student, on this goes on a sliding scale, will get merit at that school. So in order to be a very competitive, how do you get that discount? At the point in time that the school has already given their yes, you're admitted to this school, to your student, you want to, the other thing you're going to get by having filed financial aid forms is a financial aid package and a merit offer as well, hopefully. How do you improve that? Best way is to have some leverage, other generous offers from other schools. So you have housekeeping to do now, not just the need-based, but in the merit. You got to know which schools offer merit, where your kid is going to get that merit money, and apply, cast a wide net so that you can bring in those merit awards so that you have a great chance to negotiate your financial aid package when it's time.
Yeah, I think that gets overlooked a lot. So I want to just highlight it. So it's not just about finding schools that are generous, because first of all, that gets overlooked. A lot of people are stunned when they don't get back any money from like Penn State or Maryland or whatever, and they're like, "What happened? We should have gotten so much more money. I was expecting, a scholarship." And the answer is those schools are not generous. So that's very important. What pond you fish in. Yeah. And the second thing is, even if you apply to generous schools, which tend to be the private schools, the ones that have high sticker prices, but they will discount. The average discount's 56.1% last time I saw. Those schools have a high sticker price, but they're after six-figure earning families in order to get them to enroll, because they know they can charge the difference after they give a $33,000 scholarship. But what Pearl just said here is you have to make sure that your child is a competitive applicant in the top 20% or top 25% of the cohort, because if that child is lucky to get in, if they're scratching and clawing their way in, they just barely made it, they're not necessarily the most desirable, favored nation type of student. So there's really two components
Yeah.
And this always gets overlooked, or it never gets talked about by 99% of parents and guidance counselors, and you name it. Pearl, you still here?
Oh, of course.
Okay. I'm just dealing with a Facebook ad issue right now at the same time as we're
Really?
broadcasting here.
Oh.
So after you file, there's a lot of mistakes that can happen too. It's not just about filing, right? So walk us through some of those mistakes, and then if you can make a couple of comments on the possible changes that are wending their way through both houses of Congress right now.
Okay, so some mistakes I can talk about. One, not filing at all, thinking you make too much, and so you don't bother, and therefore you may inadvertently select yourself out of merit awards that you would have otherwise received had you just filed the forms. Not knowing your priority financial aid deadlines. That matters because you also don't want a school thinking you blew off their knowing about the priority financial aid deadlines, and should that be some indication of how interested or not you are in the school. So you want to be timely. You take this seriously. You're aware of all the deadlines. There are a lot of moving parts. Priority financial aid deadlines are not necessarily the same dates as your application for admission. You also need to be mindful of giving each of the schools what they ask for. You don't want to blow off logging into the school you've applied to and checking the financial aid tab in addition to the admissions tab to see if you got in, to see that a financial aid award is lurking there. Another mistake is in the FAFSA. It's kind of a quirky application process. The way it actually mechanically works, the student does the first part of the application, logs in with their FSA ID, and after that, through that application, that student invites the parent to do their portion. If you forget, if you are unaware and the parent just blows off that invitation and doesn't complete their section, that FAFSA is not submitted, and no financial aid award will be forthcoming after that until that happens. And then, you could be late, etc. Another mistake.
What about all those?
Another mistake
what
is,
happens after you file? Let's
Okay,
say you're self-employed and you send in all your stuff, and then do you get, are you done? Or because we always hear about these alarming emails that get sent.
Right. Okay. Couple things to note. When you file the financial aid form, my own personal practice is let's say I take my list of schools, however many, I check the priority financial aid deadline of each school based on the application status, how that student's applying, be it early decision, early action, restricted early action, regular decision, rolling admission. That governs what the priority financial aid deadline will be. I see on the list which school is the earliest deadline, and then my practice is to file to all schools according to that earliest deadline at once. That's fine. It's okay if you haven't filed the application for admission yet. Eventually, those two will meet up, and until that point, your financial aid application will just stay there until it meets up with an application for admission. If you decide at some point not to ever apply to that school, the financial aid application will simply purge. Nothing needed to do. After you file financial aid forms, each school will then begin asking the student and parents for additional documents based on what they learned from the application in the first place, the financial aid application specifically. If there's a business ownership in the family, then a CSS profile requiring school will likely ask for what's called the business supplement, which will be something the business owner or the CPA of the business owner can complete. It deals more with the substance of the business and its assets. If there is a separation or a divorce situation, that will garner other forms that may be required depending on the schools. Again, it all comes back to depending on your list of schools, that would determine whether you're NEED eligible. All of it comes back to your list of schools. How do I know what's required of me? Goes back to the school. Go to the school's website and learn what is required, not what your friend told you from 2 years ago, this year, because meaning the year that is about to become available. Quick note, the financial aid forms for the 26-27 aid year, okay, does not become available until October of 2025. Do not think that by completing it now, you're going to get a jump on things, because you will have completed the financial aid forms for the wrong year. So just hold tight, be ready, improve your eligibility any which way, but October 1st is when they are available. Okay, so financially, you'll go back and forth with the schools in terms of providing them anything they need and ask for in order to complete the financial aid analysis, and then provide a package for your student, assuming the student gets in. For every school you apply to and get in and have applied financial aid, you will get a financial aid package. Even if the school were to offer only loans, you will still get an itemized cost of attendance, student offer of a student loan, parent loan offer, if you will, for the rest, at every school you get into and apply for financial aid. Another mistake people make is, let's say people file financial aid forms to all the schools on their initial list, and then come December, January, they learn maybe about some of the early action schools, yes, no, whatever, and that prompts that student to apply to additional schools at that later time. I frequently see the mistake of students failing to add financial aid forms to those additionally added schools. So don't make that mistake. Eventually, when you get all financial aid packages back from all the schools you've been admitted to, that is the time to negotiate the award to the school that you hope to go to. And Andy, did you want to talk more about negotiation, or just basically touch on the fact that that's the best time to negotiate?
Yeah, the best time is really before you submit your final your initial forms. It's when you're finalizing your college list, because the best defense is a good offense.
Yes.
But we can do a whole nother episode on that.
We could. No. Okay, so after you negotiate the best award possible, if that's possible, and now it's all said and done, you know which school, how much it's going to cost, and now it's the issue of financing the school expense. So if you have the money to pay for it, great. If you don't, student is able to borrow $5,500 in their own name. Parent is able to borrow, as of now, the rest of what is owed up to the cost of attendance. That's room, board, and tuition at a school, as determined by that school, every year that you're in school. I don't want to go too deeply into what I'm about to say, but very briefly, right now on the Senate floor is the big bill, which includes provisions as to student and parent borrowing going forward. There is in that bill a proposal to limit student and parent borrowing to $50,000 per child for the whole term that they're in college altogether, not per year, which wouldn't even cut it at a lot of schools in terms of how much a parent borrows, but for all 4 years. So that is a very stark difference from what is currently available to students and parents who can borrow and finance entirely through the federal system. That's going to be a drastic change for almost everywhere, for any school that anyone wants to borrow for. So there's a prediction that there's going to be a big boom in private student parent educational loan lending to come. Anywho, if that does pass as to the class of 2026, those borrowing limits will not take effect until their senior year of college. Okay, so all right, so that is all I'm going to say on that for now, because it's only a proposal.
By the way, one more trend that I want to highlight, but it's not really a financial aid trend. So before I do that, answer Claire's question, which I'll read to you. When you're filling out your FAFSA, hi Claire, for your second child, can you still use the original parent FAFSA ID?
Yes, because each individual, your FSA ID is similar to your Social Security number. It is specific only to you. So the parent, you're still the same parent who has the same birth date and the same Social Security number. So yes, you would still use your parent FSA ID. Your second child, however, will need to obtain their own FSA ID username and password.
Good. Okay. So we don't have time to go into everything that I was trying to tackle because financial aid is so complicated. And
it is.
Yeah. So the other trend that I think we should keep an eye on and talk about next week, other than and then get to the essays and applications and all that, is the possible decrease in international students and whether that's going to help non-international, i.e. domestic, applicants boost their chances of acceptance. I probably had that conversation 3 or 4 times over the weekend with various clients and prospective clients, and they're all taking note of how at most colleges, anywhere from 25 to 40%, I think, of undergrads are international, and it seems like that's going to be diminished next year. Again, we don't know, it's just speculating. It's only the beginning of June, but that's certainly something to keep an eye on. So, Pearl, any last financial aid or other college-related comments? You have the last word before we get going with the rest of our day.
We are happy June, everybody. You have a month of proms, graduations, celebrations. July 1st, hit the ground running. Encourage your student to get going. First priority, their application, their essays, or the supplementals this summer. Don't set a foot into the senior year with this still lingering. It's just we see it cripple kids each year. Yeah. Don't let it go over.
Yeah.
And in terms of the financial aid side, take a hard look at your application list and where there's a possibility for discount for your family, where there's a possibility of discount from merit or improving your need-based eligibility. If anyone needs help with that, this is certainly what we do day in and day out. Good. Reach out. Let us know.
Very good. All right. Have a great week, everyone. Thanks, Pearl. See you in the office.
See ya.